northwest corner of Grand Avenue and Main Street in Platteville, also known as Lot 2, Block 1, Borough Subdivision, second filing. The intent of the application is to reduce the front setback from 15 feet required to the 10 feet proposed, and to increase the maximum building height from 30 feet to 42 feet. This application is filed pursuant to section 15-8-4E of the Platteville Municipal Code, which authorizes the Board of Adjustment to permit a variance when the spirit of the regulations can be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Pursuant to state law and the Platteville Municipal Code, the affirmative vote of 4 members of the Board of Adjustment is required to grant the variance. In considering this application, the board is performing a quasi-judicial function. What this means in practical terms is that the board must give every person who has a legal interest in the application an opportunity to be heard. Oral testimony shall be given under oath and recorded. Persons offering evidence shall first state their name, their address, and their legal interest in the application, whether they are appearing in the support or in the opposition. When any witness has completed his or her testimonies, the members of the board and other interested persons may ask questions about the statement that has been given. After the public hearing is closed, the board will determine its action on the application. In doing so, the board can consider only the evidence which has been duly and properly admitted or received at this hearing. Therefore, if any person present tonight has information which he or she believes the board should know in considering this matter, such person should understand that unless that information is presented at this hearing, the board cannot consider it. The applicant and other interested parties are entitled to have this application heard by an impartial board. Therefore, I will now ask the members of the board and any interested person present to state if there is any question as to whether any member of the board can fairly and impartially hear this application. Let the record show there is no affirmative response. Due notice of this hearing has been given. The applicant is present. For the record, will all persons who are here on behalf of the applicant state their names and their representative capacities.
Don Watkins, Belford Watkins Group Architects, representing Platteville Gilchrist Fire Protection District.
The board will now receive into evidence the administrative file concerning the application, which includes the application and attachments and proof of notice of this hearing. The administrative file will be received into evidence as Exhibit A. Ms. Gingrich, you're on board.
Okay.
All right. Good evening. I know it's been a while since you guys have met, but it sounds like you have a lot of experience at this. I know we have some members of the public here, so I wanted to make sure that I began, because you described legally where the site is, but the property is just north of us, and it faces Main Street. It's 4.35 acres. I know you guys have this, and so do they. I'm trying to straddle these two worlds here. So the proposal is for, it's a variance request as it relates to a fire station that's proposed. The fire station is oriented toward Main Street. I think that was one of the questions that came up. There is a parking lot facility on the south side. Town Hall is adjacent to it. And then the base for the fire district, the fire apparatus, is on the north side. And Don is going to present that a little as soon as, well, you can add to that if you.
Oh no, that's fine.
Oh no, let's
sure.
not mix it up. Let me,
Okay.
I want to go through and talk less about the facility and let the representative do that, and talk more about the criteria for a variance. So there are 6 criteria that have to be met in order for the variance to be approved. And they basically address issues of hardship and anything unique about this property. And so in looking at the first criteria, would the applicant suffer a hardship as a result of having to comply with the code? I think what's important here is this property is in an area that's zoned neighborhood residential mixed use. So it really is, that district is intended for a residential neighborhood, which is largely what you see up here. And so public facilities were contemplated as a conditional review use. So when you look at the zoning criteria like building heights and setbacks, which is what we're looking at tonight, they're really designed for homes and not big facilities like this. And I think that's where the hardship really enters this. When you look at how fire station operates, and this one will have their crew quarters, they call them, administrative offices, there's a training facility, and then there's a community space. And so in how either a facility can be, the footprint can be wide, or it can be more compact, which is how it's designed here. And it's more efficient, according to the district, if it is more compact in terms of their response time. And so that's why the design, you know, my basic understanding of why the design is done the way that it is, and I think it makes sense that the height would need to increase. And so the 42 feet in particular is really the height of that tower, and that's part of their training facility. And again, that will be explained in more detail. But I think that's where fundamentally the hardship is. If we require them to meet the 30-foot setback typical of a single-family home, it doesn't really address the needs of a public facility like this one. So that was the first criteria. The second one, are there any design alternatives or alternative locations? And again, the way that this has been presented to us, we don't really see that. I mean, if they picked another location in Platteville that would be the same design, we'd have the same height issues. You know, it might resolve the setback issues, but it certainly would not resolve the height issues. So we don't believe that there is an alternative location that would meet this. The third one has to do, you know, would they be deprived of any rights enjoyed by other people in the same district? And we believe that they would, because they couldn't build this facility here, and the code does contemplate it. Furthermore, the existing fire station is across the street. So that's an important consideration in looking at, this is an area that is already, the character of this area is already established around a fire station being here. Arguably, this might be closer to some homes, but further away from others, so that impact might be a little different. But again, it's basically the facility's moving across the street. So the fourth one has to do, does it result in any sort of reckless or negligent actions? And we don't believe that it does. The fifth one, I guess I kind of jumped into that in terms of the character of the neighborhood. Again, the fire station already exists in this neighborhood, so the character of the neighborhood's really been built around it since it's existed there for a long time. And then finally, the sixth one, is it the minimum variance required? And we believe that it is. The setback, the 5 feet on the front in particular, you know, either they push the facility back for closer to the homes on the west, and so the fire apparatus, as it moves around, the facility would be closer to those homes. That would be a negative. Or they reduce the size of the community facility, which from their perspective was not desirable. And we believe that meeting space it would be a good asset for the town, as well as the district. So with that, there is a more detailed description that hopefully you had an opportunity to read about the variance, and they go into a lot more detail as to the operations. But staff finds that the proposed variance is in compliance with the criteria, as I just walked you through them. And based upon the attached resolution, which is also part of the public record, that's in fact what you would be approving tonight if you were to approve this variance. So I can answer any questions at this point.
Is it presently zoned that way, or is the zoning need to be changed yet?
It's presently zoned that way. There's no change in zone.
What will happen after this, Mr. Chair, is that the Planning Commission Board will consider this as a conditional review use in the existing zoning district. So it would be allowed without a zone change.
It is scheduled the planning commission and the board for a hearing next week, depending on the outcome, you know.
Please, does the board like to have the applicant have an opportunity to speak?
Sure.
Present.
Yeah, I'll just fill in a little bit more detail on the facility that might help better understand some of the parameters that have led to the design of the building as is. Melissa touched on a few of those. One of the early decisions that was made was to go to a two-story structure. Excuse me. The reason for that was this is going to be actually Platteville Gilcrest's headquarters station. So you're going to have your administrative personnel here. You're going to have on-duty personnel here, and those two mingle together on the first floor. Then you've got crew quarters that support the fire response. And opportunities we looked at of maybe putting that somewhere on the other side of the bays, for instance. But as Melissa indicated, it started to wind up with a very sprawling type facility, and it also then separated the crew quarters from the duty offices, and it made for a less efficient daily interaction for the fire administration and the firefighters. So by putting the crew quarters on the second floor, they have immediate access from the duty quarters to the bays, as well as immediate access from the upper level via catwalk system and down some stairs into the apparatus bay. So that's why the two-story structure, as Melissa had noted, this, when you look at this drawing, north is to your right, as opposed to up, which is kind of more standard and traditional. So Town Hall, actually where we're at, sits right down here on this end, and the rest of the site is to the north of us here. So between the fire station and Town Hall, there will be a parking lot developed that you see at this location. And it's a fairly good-sized parking lot. And one of the reasons for that is, as Melissa noted, there will be a training room associated with this fire station that will also be open and available to the public for community uses as well. Excuse me. So we wanted to provide enough parking there to accommodate that. And there's also some synergy here between the town and the fire district in terms of being able to share that parking if need be. If you had a large turnout for a meeting such as this, they could park over there as well as here in front of the facility.
How many is that? How many actual parking spaces do you know?
Yeah, I do. Forgive me.
It's 52.
Yeah, 50.
Plus 8.
Yeah, so there's about 42 spaces where the public could park, and the remainder are for the firefighters. And they tend to be more back behind on the west side of the building. So as you're looking at the footprint here, so on the south end, you have the two-story structure, which is the administrative area and the crew quarters above. And then everything to the north of that are the apparatus bays, and there are 6 bays. 2 of the bays, most immediately adjacent to the crew quarters and office area, are drive-through bays. But the other bays are all what we call tandem bays. So there are 2 vehicles or 2 pieces of apparatus parked in each one of those bays. And that is one of the reasons that the roof lines start to get tall. It's not only the 2-story structure, but when you are parking apparatus in tandem, the bay gets long, and therefore the roof ridge tends to get higher. As Melissa had indicated, the maximum height is on the tower, and so that's a really small element on the building up on the Main Street side. And the tower is there to provide not only some training opportunities. Now for you, those of you who are aware of the Gilcrest station, they have a training facility down there. The training here would be things such as rappelling, hose advancements upstairs, and that type of thing. The idea is the firefighters can train in-house without having to go to Gilcrest all the time for training. And so what that means is they're here, they can train, but at the same time, if they need to respond to an emergency, they're right here in their home house. They don't have to come to Gilcrest. So it helps with regards to emergency response. The other use for the tower is just that the hoses that are used are canvas clad hoses, and they need to be dried. And one of the most effective and easy way to dry a hose is to hang it. But a 50-foot hose, you need 25 feet of height to hang the hose, doubled over, a little bit off the floor and enough room at the top to get up there and do what you need to do with the hoses. So that's one of the reasons the tower is the height it is. The ridge lines of the roof is actually lower than that. That is the tallest element on the facility. With regard to, so that maybe answers a little bit about why is the building the height it is. But I would say, and as you look at the elevations here, and I believe everybody has those in their packets there, we have worked at not having just one big massive box of a building. As you can see, there's lots of different roof levels, or lots of, as you can see on the plan here, the building moves in and out a lot. The idea here was between that and the scale of the materials that we're using on the building, i.e. brick and some metal siding, it helps to break the scale down and bring it more into a residential type feel. If we just had a giant box, it would fill out of place in the area because that's just not the way residences are built. So that's one of the reasons that you see a lot of diversity in terms of the footprint and also the height of the building. Excuse me. With regard to the variance for the community room, one of the problems that we had is that we started to develop the site before it was replatted. It was originally platted to be a number of residential lots that never were developed. And so when the district bought the property, it was all divided up into lots with actually a street that went through kind of at the middle, at the backside of their property. That was all platted into one lot. When that happened though, the street right-of-way that was there, by state law, half of it went to the district, but the other half went to the adjacent property owner, whoever touched that lot, which in this case was the apartment complex, that's right in the middle there. So we lost some distance, and that kind of squished us down in terms of the building, but mainly it's driven by the turning radius of the apparatus. So to be able to come around the backside of the building and then do a back-end maneuver into these bays, we were getting pretty skinny there. And so we wound up with this small piece of the training room right here on the front, kind of protruding into the setback that is along Main Street there. So that's why we were asking for a variance on that. I think as you can see, there's only that small exposure of the building that actually protrudes into that setback. The rest of it is set back well from that setback line. So it's just that small area. But it felt that the reason that we didn't just cut the community room back and just say we're done and that's good is the district really wanted to make sure they had the maximum size room possible because they know that the community is going to want to use that space. That's kind of it in a nutshell. If there's any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Don, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you recall or do you know from the property line what the distance is to the edge of roadway of Main Street, what that distance may be? Because you're going to go from 15 to 10 setback.
Sure.
But from the property line to the roadway, what is that approximate distance? Do you know?
From at the training room to the roadway, we are about 30 feet,
Okay, so
maybe 35.
Okay.
Is that from where the state owns part of that? Or is that
That'd be to the edge of the state.
clear up to, don't they own?
Yes. So part of that 35 feet is their right of way, but we were talking to the edge of the pavement, right?
Yeah, correct.
Any other questions? This time I will ask if there are any persons other than the applicant who desire to give evidence in this matter.
Any public comments tonight?
Yep. Seeing none, we'll move on. At this time, I'll open the floor to questions from the board members.
Sorry about being late, but I do have one question. Has CDOT been approached about gaining access to the highway?
Yes, they have. Yeah, we've had 3 separate meetings with CDOT. The very first meeting was to discuss the location of these access points onto Main Street. So as you can see, this one over here that access to the parking lot, that aligns directly with Washington. And then the other one aligns pretty much with Lincoln. So we were trying to maintain those existing roadway alignments, not wind up in the middle of the street somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Public hearing is now closed. The board will now determine its action on the application. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion or discussion?
Any discussion? And do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I make a motion to approve, the application for a variance of the new fire station proposed by the Platteville Gilchrist Fire Protection District. Is that good enough?
Specifically for the height of 42 feet and the setback to 10 foot in the front.
As so moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution number BOA 2019-01, the resolution of the Platteville Board of Adjustment for approving the variance to reduce the required setback and increase the allowing building height for the Platteville Fire Station. This time I will ask for approval. How many? May I hear those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion passes. We're done.
Comment for the Board of Adjustment. Since it's been 5 years since the last minutes were approved, Murray's going